I'd like to take a look at page 382 and the definition of death. In particular, I want to start with just this one quote in the middle. The life of the cellular, tissue, or organ components, while often necessary for the life of the organism, is not equivalent to the life of the organism. And then he says, because the life of its component parts is not equivalent to the life of an organism can die despite some of its component parts remaining alive as a consequence of technological support. So, what do I want to say about this? I think this quote is too modest. And before I explain why, let me back up a moment and just rehearse the big picture of Bernat's approach. The big picture, recall, is this. First, you've got a paradigm of some concept like death. Second, you try to get a definition of that concept. Third, you try to come up with criteria for the definition. And then fourth, you try to come up with concrete tests that can help you with the criteria. Now, let's take a silly example to make it lighthearted. Instead of thinking about death, let's think for a moment about breath, especially bad breath. Nobody wants bad breath. We sometimes think about bad breath in the context of someone who wants to kiss us. But not just there. Also in settings where you're working in close quarters with someone, like a classmate, who you would not want to kiss if your very life depended on it. Does the definition of bad breath apply to dogs too? Probably. My dog sometimes has really bad breath, but it's more of a human thing that we're most concerned about. What about dinosaurs? Nah, probably not so concerned about dinosaurs. Our concept of bad breath is more focused on what we as humans find to be bad breath, and it usually has something to do with the smell. Not so much the temperature, not so much the windiness. The smell is what makes a bad breath bad to begin with. That's what we're talking about. So we have several elements in the paradigm that need to constrain whatever definition of bad breath we eventually come to. This is the paradigm step in a sketchy way. Okay, what about the definition step? What makes a thing an instance of bad breath? What features does a thing have to have in order to be an instance of bad breath? These are called necessary conditions. What features automatically make a thing an instance of bad breath? These are called sufficient conditions. Now, there could be lots of proposals here. Let's say that your friend says, "Ooh, bad breath smells like pizza." Another friend says, "No, bad breath smells like morning breath." A third friend says, "No, bad breath just smells like something died." Of course, that brings in the definition of death. Maybe I should avoid that one here. A fourth friend says, "Bad breath just smells bad." Okay, now do you see the point? These are different proposals. Some of them specific, some of them general, some of them more believable than others. I, for one, wouldn't mind if someone had pizza breath, as long as it was the kind of hot, steamy pizza, smelling all fresh and good coming out of the oven. But I digress. Let's say you get clear on the definition part. Maybe you say bad breath is just whatever smells bad to a person nearby. Okay, that's one definition. Now you have lots of work left to do with the criteria. How do you know when a given instance of breath is bad breath? How do you tell? One proposal for a criteria: observe people nearby. Another proposal: ask people nearby. Another proposal: smell the breath of another person to see if they have bad breath. Another proposal: smell your own breath. Like the different definitions, these different criteria will vary in their believability. A word to the wise: it's usually not safe to trust your own opinion of your own breath. Just saying. Okay, now it's time for tests. What's the test of whether I've got bad breath? Put my spouse up close and ask my spouse? Put a stranger up close and ask a stranger? What's the precise test of either of them? Do they have to say, ew, within 10 seconds? Do they have to merely say, on a scale of 1 to 9, I rate your breath as a 4, 3, 2, or a 1? Okay. Hopefully that trail helps to keep in perspective the big picture of Bernat's article. So then, remember what I said about Bernat's quote here being too modest? Bernat says this: because the life of its component parts is not equivalent to the life of an organism can die despite some of its component parts remaining alive as a consequence of technological support. Now, I think this is too modest, okay? So I'm going to put the quotation in quote marks. I think this is too modest because it seems that Bernat could have said this, and I'll capitalize the words I change. Because the life of its component parts is not equivalent to the life of an organism can die despite all of its component parts remaining alive without any technological support. Now, that's an interesting result, isn't it?